Lewis Hamilton has warned that if Red Bull do not receive a serious penalty for their breach of the Formula One budget cap, the purpose of the spending limit will be rendered pointless in the future. In this video, I have brought to you the news in detail. Make sure you stick with me to the end of the video so you don't miss any part of the gist. Without any further delay, let's get into it. Hamilton's take on what would be the outcome if the FIA is relaxed about the budget cap rules. Red Bull is deemed to have committed minor breach of cap. Hamilton has previously made it clear that he believes an overspend could have had a material effect on the outcome of the 2021 World Championship, in which he was narrowly beaten to the title by Red Bull's Max Verstappen. The argument has dominated F1 since the FIA announced Red Bull had breached the cap, the day after Verstappen sealed his second title at the Japanese Grand Prix 2 weeks ago. Red Bull denied they exceeded the $145 million ceiling imposed in 2021, with the team understood to believe the discrepancy was due to a differing interpretation of the rules. It has been reported that the breach may have been as much as $2 million, a sum Hamilton has pointedly noted would have been enough to bring significant performance upgrades to a car in 2021. Before this weekend's US GP in Austin, Texas, the seven-time champion was insistent the FIA had to act decisively to punish any transgression of the cap, to which he said that he does think the sport needs to do something about this for the future, because otherwise, if it is relaxed with these rules, then all the teams will just go over and spend millions more. Then only having a slap on the wrist is not going to be great for the sport. They might as well not have a cost cap in the future. The process is continuing regarding the breach, which the sport's governing body considers minor, within 5% of the cap, anything up to a total of $7.25 million. Hamilton noted that the integrity of F1 was at stake in regards to how it was dealt with. It is understood that the FIA has proposed the terms of an accepted breach agreement to Red Bull. If it is agreed, it would bring the process to a close. Should Red Bull accept the agreement, their penalties would be limited to a financial sanction, but crucially not a reduction in a future budget cap, or minor sporting penalties including limitations on aerodynamic testing, but not a deduction of points from drivers or teams, removing any chance last year's championship could be overturned. Should Red Bull not agree and take their case to an independent adjudication committee, they would then be subject to a full range of penalties. Next up, let's talk about the harsh punishments and penalties dished out in Formula One. Be it espionage or team orders, Formula One is never short on teams pushing the limits when it comes to following the rules. Occasionally, lines are crossed, like last season when Racing Point were fined and docked points. When Racing Point were handed a €400,000 fine and deducted 15 points for copying Mercedes' 2019 brake ducts last season, it raised some eyebrows around the grid and amongst viewers at home. However, it wasn't the stiffest penalty handed out in Formula One history, as the list of F1 harsh punishments and penalties I have here shows. Stay with me as we take a look at some of the harshest punishments for those that cross the line. Let's kick off with Ferrari, Schumacher, and Barrichello $1 million fine. Rubens Barrichello was set to win the Austrian Grand Prix back in 2002, only for team orders to rear their ugly head just before the finish line. The Brazilian hit the brakes with meters left in the race, opening the door for teammate Michael Schumacher to claim the victory. The maneuver didn't sit well with spectators at the track and those watching at home, especially since the race was just the 6th out of the 17 scheduled for that season, meaning there were no pressing title implications. It certainly made the podium ceremony awkward as well, as fans booed Ferrari's decision given Barrichello started on pole and led for most of the race. Schumacher tried to help the situation by letting Barrichello climb to the top step and giving him the first place trophy, but he in fact made things worse. While there were no rules against team orders at the time, there were rules against changing places on the podium. As a result, Ferrari, Schumacher, and Barrichello were handed a fine of $1 million, with each paying a third immediately. The incident also led the FIA to ban team orders at the start of the 2003 season, though they were then reintroduced in 2010. Our next harsh punishment and penalties in the list is that of Renault's 2-year conditional suspension. Team orders were at the heart of the Renault controversy that erupted in 2008, though the context was very different. Fernando Alonso won the Singapore Grand Prix after starting from 15th spot, inheriting top spot thanks to the safety car being deployed after teammate Nelson Piquet Jr. crashed at turn 17 on the 14th lap. While the Brazilian initially stated his accident was a simple mistake, he changed his story when he was dropped by the team after the 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix. Piquet stated he was asked by the team to deliberately crash in order to help Alonso, given the Spaniard had previously made an early pit stop and benefited from the safety car conditions. The FIA charged Renault with conspiracy, and the team announced they would not contest the charges. The team were handed a disqualification from Formula One, which was suspended for 2 years pending any further comparable infractions. Team Managing Director Flavio Briatore and Executive Director of Engineering Pat Simmons left the team, with the Italian banned for life and the Brit banned for 5 years. Piquet escaped punishment, along with Alonso, whose involvement in the incident was never proven. Next up, the case of a two-car suspension of a Bar Honda car. Fernando Alonso beat Michael Schumacher to the finish line at the 2005 San Marino Grand Prix, but it was what happened in the final podium spot that made headlines. Jenson Button took home third place in the Bar Honda car, while Takuma Sato finished fifth, a welcome result for the team given their slow start to the season. However, things took an ugly turn for the team after the race, as the FIA found Button's car to be 4.99 kilograms underweight. The car was found to have a second fuel tank that, when drained, meant the Bar car was underweight. Although the stewards initially accepted the team's explanation, but their tune changed at a court of appeal. Bar was stripped of the points earned at Imola and banned from the following 2 races in Spain and Monaco. They eventually finished the season 6th in the constructors' standings with 38 points. Another harsh F1 penalty that made the list is that of McLaren's $100 million fine. While the 2007 season was memorable, given Kimi Räikkönen took the 3-way title fight at the final race, accusations of espionage dominated the headlines for much of the season, known as Spygate or Stepneygate. The original case saw Ferrari accuse former employee Nigel Stepney, senior McLaren engineer Mike Coughlin, and his wife of stealing technical information. Although an initial hearing didn't result in any penalty for McLaren, a second hearing brought forward compelling evidence that resulted in a stiff penalty for the outfit. McLaren were excluded from the 2007 Constructors' Championship and handed a fine of $100 million. Adding insult to injury was the fact that McLaren duo Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton entered the final race of the season in Brazil ahead of Räikkönen. They both missed out on the driver's title by 1 point. Wrapping it up, the next harsh punishment we have here is Tyrrell's 1984 exclusion. Tyrrell was the only team to use a naturally aspirated engine in 1984, as its rivals all adopted turbochargers. Lead shots were seen being omitted from the top of the cars during races, and after an FIA investigation, it was revealed that the cars were having their tanks topped by 2 gallons of water and 140 pounds of lead shot. They were then hit with a trio of charges, which are illegal fuel lines, and illegal fitted ballast, and the team was disqualified from the World Championship after being banned from the final 3 races. They lost all championship points and the additional subsidized travel benefits for the championship in the following year. Aside from the harsh nature of the punishment, this was controversial for another reason. Other teams, notably Brabham and Williams, had found a clever but sneaky way of making the minimum weight prior to adopting the turbos. By using water-cooled brakes, the car was filled with water to pass the weight test. How? Though the car would be lightweight throughout the race as water was dumped out, they were topped up with water later on and weighed at the end. And because this, to the letter of the law, constituted original car fluids, it was allowed. That concludes today's video. If you found the video helpful, please do consider giving us a thumbs up. And don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. See you next time.